this computer, not that computer. Chat. Okay, that was Connor. I got that. Let's do a share. We're in business. I mentioned last week that I was able to have a conversation with Timothy Clark, the author of the book we've been using. Really a nice individual. I wanted him to speak to y'all, but he just doesn't have time right now. So his messages, he's very, very, very personable, very friendly. Somebody writing about psychological safety, you would think would be friendly and personable, and he definitely was. Very, very wonderful and nice gentleman to talk to. So week 6, 10 weeks left after this week. That's amazing. Time is flying by, isn't it? It feels like it. All right, so challenger safety. Let's dig into challenger safety this week. This is, of course, the last stage of the 4 stages. And it's interesting because this stage really sets us up for the next 8 weeks. The next 8 weeks, we're going to be talking about something called systems thinking. There is a controversy throughout academia, but in the business world, whether systems thinking applies to management and business or not. The top minds, such as Peter Singhi, Amy Edmondson, yes, she's psychological safety, but researchers deal with more than one field. Barry Oshry, they all 100% say that systems thinking is very beneficial and useful in an organization. And I can prove it. Now, I'm not one of the top people in the field, but let me prove it to you. Systems thinking in business helps you to evaluate policies, procedures, personnel using analysis, meaning you study each of those elements thoroughly. Then you step back and you don't use analysis, but you use synthesis to actually look at the interconnectedness between the policies and the people and the different individuals. You look at how they're connected. You look at how the skills complement each other, how organizational behavior patterns, communication patterns, etc., how they interrelate and mesh together in a cross-functional way. Once you see that, you see the bigger system. Once you step back far enough, you can see how that system is actually an element in another system, much like our planet is one of many in the solar system, 8. But our solar system is one of gazillions, that's a technical word, one of billions in our galaxy. And our galaxy is one of billions or trillions in the universe. And so much like how the universe is set up that way, so too are humans. Because you have yourself, then you have yourself and your partner or your friend group, and then you've got your other social groups, and then you've got your work group, and you got this group, and you got your group from the past, from your alma mater. Then you've got your organization over here that's divided into multiple groups, and there's groups over that. So human existence is very similar to a planet in the universe. So systems thinking helps us to break this all down and then basically rebuild it all back together conceptually so we understand how it works. It also helps us to be able to predict moments of chaos because the Feigenbaum constant comes into play. That basically is what 4.66926 something keeps going forever. But it doesn't matter if it's a far distant pulsar that's emitting random bursts of radiation, or if it's your faucet that's dripping, or an organization going through chaotic moments. The ratio is always that Feigenbaum constant. And you can actually graph it out and basically predict the approximate time period that chaos should hit the organization, which is very beneficial for a leader to have. So you can plan ahead for that change moment, that innovation, that chaos. So yes, systems thinking is very essential in business. Sometimes you just have to reword it so people understand why it's essential. Otherwise, they're thinking, it's all physics. Yes, so is gravity, but we can use gravity to explain attraction between 2 human beings. So anyway, that was free, by the way. I didn't charge you for that one. So challenger safety sets us up for learning about systems thinking, which is a subset of systems theory, which is under complexity theory, nonlinear systems, dynamical systems theory, evolutionary biology, network theory, graph theory, and many more. And so once again, everything relates to another. So this first 8 weeks relates to our second 8 weeks. Both of these relate to how to lead a team effectively in the current time period we're in, moving into the future. In the past, it didn't explain things, but the wheel caught on. I mean, somebody had to invent it. What, 10,000 years ago? It caught on. Trust me, systems thinking is definitely useful in the business world. So, Patron, I don't think I'm saying that right, maybe Patron, 2019 pointed out that creativity, persuasion, collaboration, adaptability, time, and management are soft skills organizations are looking for in their candidates. All right. Creativity leads to innovation. But where do we get creativity? From those moments of chaos I was just talking about. Chaos causes instability. As humans, we want to grab onto an old way of thinking to give us a sensation of stability. In reality, everything is progressing forward non-linearly, which I'll explain in a second. So if we embrace the chaos instead of an old procedure, we allow for something new to emerge. Could be innovation, could be a new policy, a new procedure, a new perspective. All right. So what was I going to explain? My brain derailed. This is one of my favorite subjects too. Wow. That was like a total eraser, or my brain just totally erased. Anyway, it might come back to me in a minute. So Wang et al. In 2018 noted that humility is an essential trait in leaders who are determined to implement psychological safety. As a leader, you could be egotistical and narcissistic, or you could be humble and servant. Those are styles. Your humble servant, your humble leader, and your servant leadership. These are styles of leadership. The humble leadership is very similar to servant leadership. So you could use either of those in conjunction with another style, such as laissez-faire, authoritarian, even diplomatic, which I really don't recommend diplomatic often because you have to reach a consensus. And groups of humans rarely reach consensus. There's usually arguing, bickering, and self-censorship. So if you really want good feedback from a team, you don't go that route. You take this attitude of being a humble leader or a servant leader, and you stimulate that feedback process through encouragement and motivation instead. Wayne further pointed out that humble leadership, we already said that. So leadership and creativity are connected to the application of psychological safety. That's what it was. Creativity. Creativity means we leave the past ways behind us and we embrace the chaos to develop something new. That is innovation. Innovation comes from creativity, creativity from chaos. So chaos, in this case, is not bad. It actually leads to new things, such as, did you know that in World War II, they developed the technology that became our cell phone? All the way back in World War II, in the 1940s. But it took all those decades before it was something that we could put in our pocket. He had to go through stages. The computer. The first computer took up 4 floors at a university, 4 floors of a building. And all it did was basic arithmetic. But before that happened, we have the Turing machine. Once again, World War II, Alan Turing. He was famous because he was able to help decipher the German code. Okay. And then they got the Enigma machine and they had it deciphered and they could go through it even quicker. Before that, they used the Turing machine, which was a wall of these devices. It was an early computer. So where we got to today, having a computer in our pocket, started on entire floors of buildings, entire walls and rooms of military buildings, built up to the point where we have not only communications, but we have a computer in our pocket. Some of us have a smartwatch. That's a computer. That has more computing power than the first computer ever could have thought of. And you're wearing it on your wrist. This was science fiction 30, 40, 50 years ago. You're living in science fiction. And that is because there was chaos in World War II. caused innovation to occur, or creativity, which led to innovation, which led to the beginnings of these new technologies. The microwave oven started around the early 1940s with the Manhattan Project. And now everyone's home has one in there. We cook our food or our coffee, we heat it up right there. Okay, so challenger safety. Knowledge sharing bridges the gap between providing psychological safety and creative innovation. If you want psychological safety and you want creative innovation, you must have knowledge sharing. Now, knowledge sharing is something that sounds simple, but in reality is really complex. I'm going to break it down for you so you have a usable version of it. We got a group of people. Each of us have our own perspectives and our own skill sets. We also have a past where we've learned numerous things. When we come into a group and we share that within the group, now we actually have knowledge sharing. When an organization promotes that and they use that knowledge sharing productively, leading to innovation, now you have a learning organization, meaning an organization that is capable of going through the psychological process of learning. Organizations are more like a human being than we like to think, not just legally, but you have the central nervous system, senior executives. You have the peripheral nerves, middle management. You have organizational leadership. Do you know that your intestines have its own intrinsic nervous system that's separate from your central nervous system? But more than that, we have departments. Your kidneys are the second most complex system in your body outside of the nervous system. Organizations are set up with departments. Each department has workers. Our organs have cells, specialized cells, that have special skill sets that only work in that department. A liver cell does not work in the kidney. So knowledge sharing bridges that gap. Knowledge sharing will help an organization become a learning organization. And this is due to psychological safety not always being sufficient, but that the application of knowledge sharing mitigates that discrepancy. And you see, psychological safety has its limitations, but the sharing of knowledge among individuals on the team or in the organization mitigates or resolves that discrepancy. So with psychological safety, you need knowledge sharing. That is, if you want an organization that is poised to not just survive into the future, but thrive into the future. Clark pointed out that the human brain has neuroplasticity, which means it can restructure itself. You, through meditation, through attending college, reading books, through watching documentaries, actually rewire your brain. We do that even through music. We do that through entertainment, movies we watch. You know, if you watch a horror movie, the terror that you feel, that you think, oh, it's just the movie scared me, your body doesn't realize that it was something fake that scared you. Your body thinks that you actually were in a dangerous situation. Your brain is, that's susceptible to things. It modulates, it develops more neurons. It reroutes neurons as needed. It's dynamic, much like an organization is. Because organizations modify and modulate its communication channels depending on the necessity or the need at that moment. So our brains are plastic. Our brains are plastic, not like what we think of as plastic, but meaning it can be shaped and changed and maneuvered around. Our teams are too. You can restructure how a team learns. You can develop different types of motivation in your team. You can actually make that team get to the place where it operates as a unique entity that only functions when all the members are present and accounted for. So teams are capable of this adaptation and change. So we got to look at the learned patterns that the team develops. And we do this by looking at the leader. because the team is going to be like a mirror of what the leader demonstrates and shows. Just like when you get ready in the morning and you stand in front of your mirror, comb your hair, for those who actually have hair, you are seeing a reflection of yourself. The team is a reflection of the leader. If the leader allows their mind to undergo these changes of neuroplasticity, of adaptability, so too will the team. Now, not instantly. That takes a bit to develop. It's a little slower at times, depending on the organizational behavior patterns between each of the members. Democratized innovation. Clark mentioned that challenger safety democratizes innovation. However, any cultural barriers or obstacles must be removed from the team before challenger safety is granted. That's because, as you're going to find out today, that culture layer, it's one of 3 layers that we find. It's also the hardest one to actually change in a team. You have a structural layer, you have a behavioral layer, and you have the cultural layer. That is the hardest because, one, that team, its culture is comprised of, it's a composite of the culture that each individual represents, not just ethnic culture, but even deeper than that, their personal culture, their morals, their values, their perceptions. As the team coalesces and begins to work and move and think as a team, as a unit, these cultural barriers, if they're not lowered, present obstacles that cause, should I say, the team to become almost a hostile environment. You can find a lot of in-group fighting. You're not in my group, therefore you're wrong, and I push you away. By pushing you away, that causes self-censorship. Now we have members not contributing. Now, instead of being able to work as a unit, we have a small group within that team monopolizing everything. Internal connectivity within the team is essential for innovation. In other words, people have got to connect. They've got to communicate. They have to share ideas and perceptions. They've got to share even life stories. When I give my life stories to my classes as anecdotes, I'm doing this because you can actually learn and your brain can restructure through what's called vicarious learning. You weren't in the Navy. You weren't in the Army. I was. But when I share my stories that relate to what we're learning, your brain begins to modify itself almost to be like you were there, right there with me. And then you get the benefits of that through vicarious learning. Internal dissent benefits the team and its ability to innovate, as long as that dissent is constructive, not destructive. Although you can use destructive dissent in a positive way, it's really difficult to get an entire group of people to do that. As an individual, you can hear criticism. You can receive negative feedback. And you yourself can decide how you're going to apply that in a positive way or in a negative way. It was intended negatively, but that doesn't mean you have to use it negatively. You could look for the benefit, the positive. That's your choice. But with a team, you've got a group of people, and somebody in that team is going to be hurt by that criticism. They're going to hold it personally. A grudge is going to develop. Now we've got a behavioral barrier that, of course, harms challenger safety. Clark noted that it is easier to socialize a team from the beginning rather than to wait until later. Meaning, if you were my team, we would have already gone out for Taco Tuesdays several times. We probably would have gone bowling or putt-putt golf just to build up some connectivity and some social interaction in advance. Because once we do that, now we can develop a esprit de corps, that team spirit. We've spent time together. We've bonded as a group. We've become friends. Don't wait until the team needs to innovate to engage in socializing them. Do that from the beginning. Because if you wait till later, now you have ingrained behaviors and habits. And a bad habit is much harder to get rid of than it is to introduce a bad habit. Bad habits introduce themselves so fast and they'll take hold of your team. And getting rid of them is very difficult. So from the beginning, you introduce good habits to fight against bad habits when they arise. And one way to do this is you socialize the team. You get them to become a social unit. You remove barriers between team members. Alexander, if you and Vios are at odds with each other about a certain process, I, as the leader, should step in and help you resolve the conflict. Conflict resolution is also under the purview of leadership. Resolve that conflict. Get harmony back between the two of you, because that disharmony is going to spread through the team. And people are going to side with Alexander and other people are going to side with Vios. Now we have factions at war with each other. We're not going to innovate. We're barely going to survive as a team. So before it turns into all-out warfare, get in there and resolve the conflict. Layers of challenger safety. Clark stated organizational change is a process that moves through 3 separate layers. You have technical, which I've also called structural, behavioral, and cultural. Now, the structural or technical, this includes non-human aspects such as systems, processes, structures, roles, responsibilities, policies, procedures, tools, equipment, stuff like that. The things humans use to communicate or interrelate. Phone system, text messaging, that falls under that structural or technical layer. These are called artifacts. That's what Clark calls them. They're artifacts. That doesn't mean we are archaeologists and we dig them up, but it's an artifact. It's a thing that is secondary to something else. The structural layer or the technical layer, you have anything that gives the team its structure. I'm going to reiterate this: equipment, policies, procedures. These are artifacts. Then you have the behavioral layer. This considers how the individuals behave in the team atmosphere. The example with the disagreement between Alexander and Vios, that right there is a negative display of a process occurring at the behavioral level. As a leader, I mitigate it, I resolve the issue, we move forward. Now we've maintained the stability of the behavioral level. In the cultural layer, this includes the individual's cultural influences and the internal organizational culture of the team and organization. An organization, much like a person, can have a culture or be part of a culture. Cleary University has its own identity, which includes its own culture. You're exposed to that as a freshman. It's called the Cleary Mind. 8 points that not only help you through school, but also later in life in your profession. That's really the core of the Cleary culture. But it extends even further. It extends into the academic department, the athletic department, the admin department, HR.
You want me to bring one of these ice cream coolers for the other company?
I would agree with that, but I don't know.
Let it ride.
I think someone's got a mic on. Did somebody ask you a question? Leah, are you asking a question? Okay, I guess not. Okay, so just like Cleary has its own culture, academia as a whole has a culture that you're going to find similarities between Harvard, University of Hawaii, University of Michigan, Cleary, the community college down the road. You're going to find a culture in that industry. So when you get out and you're working for company XYZ, they're going to have its own culture. They're going to be part of an industrial culture, which is part of a societal culture based on the region that the headquarters of the main office is in. This gets complex because what if we want to develop a branch in, hey, Vios, where are you from?
Germany.
Germany. So we want to build a branch in Germany, but we're going to use American terminology, American societal cultural tendencies. We're going to Americanize that office. No, it's not going to work. What we need to do is allow for that office to be of German identity in its culture, to allow German to be spoken through most of the building, to encourage that actually, to bring in any festivals that are locally observed and celebrate them as an organization, to make that a satellite of the main office, but with its own identity based on where it's at. Why? Because the employees are going to be coming from Germany. Sure, some of the senior executives may come from America, but they can adapt. It's easier for them to adapt because there's fewer of them. So adapt to the culture that comprises the majority of the people working. You see that with organizations that create offices in India and around the world. If they try to Americanize it, there will be resistance against the policies, procedures, and techniques. If you allow it to be of indigenous nature and its culture, it can thrive. It's easier for it to thrive. That links into biomimicry, using biology, ecology as we see it, as a template for what we're going to use either in our innovations for technology, inventions, or how we operate an organization. So let's look at changing the layers. Clark noted that the structural or the technical layer is directly impacted when the behavioral layer changes. So if you change the behavioral layer, the structural will change. Don't change the structural hoping to change the behavioral, because it doesn't work that way. We can change our equipment, but it's not going to change how that organization behaves. You change its behavior, then you may need to add new equipment. As they actually get better, you might have the Google glasses, which that was a thing for a bit and they never really worked like they needed to. Maybe one day they will. And we'll be using them in business and school and stuff like that. Before we bring that in, we're going to have to adapt the behavioral layer. So if the artifacts are used to support the behavioral aspect here at this layer, then if they are removed, the structure falls apart. So if the technology, the policies, the procedures support the behavior, and the behavior is changed, the structure has to change. If you don't, you're going to lose something here. And that usually means that the structure falls apart. Human behavior easily reverts to old patterns, especially if there's a change at the cultural layer. If you make a change in the cultural layer, human behavior will return back to patterns from the past. And since you have a team or an organization with multiple and many individuals, you have a lot of different pasts that are going to be popping up left and right. Some people will cling to a authoritarian methodology, some to more of a, I don't want to use the word derogatorily, but the tribal mentality of a group and a team, and they reinforce the team atmosphere, but they have people leaving to go off here to the authoritarians. And so you get splits. You get actually factions again developing. There's a term in statistics for this process of reverting to something from the past. It's actually a regression to the mean. So if you are analyzing your team and you want to put it on paper, you're going to collect the correct dependent and independent data, run a regression to the mean, and maybe a few other things like a standard deviation and things like that. But you're going to have the statistical proof of what's occurring. And that is people are clinging to the past. Still talking about changing layers, Clark noted that the changing the cultural layer is the most difficult. This is due to a lack of intrinsic motivation, according to Clark. Intrinsic motivation is motivation from inside oneself, from their mind. If you want to change the cultural layer, you have to first be able to change the minds of the people on the team. That's why I say if we're going to put an American business in Germany, we're going to make the organization more German over there. Because we don't need to change the cultural, because we will have an uphill battle that we'll be fighting for the rest of the time. Why even go that way? Just make that culture more German, the organization more German. This way it can take root and it can become strong. Challenger safety, if I could get my cursor, there we go, requires the greatest intersection of respect and permission. We've brought that up during every single stage we've talked about. In challenger safety, you've got the greatest intersection between those two concepts of respect and permission. There is something called an innovation threshold, and this needs to be crossed first. You look for this by evaluating to see if the team experiences or is experiencing psychological safety without fear. Remember, fear should not be in a team that has psychological safety other than natural fear, meaning I might fear if a bear walked in the room or if a mountain lion came strolling down the hall. That's natural fear. We're supposed to have that. But the organizational fear, the fear of rejection, the fear of being judged, there is no place for that in psychological safety. If you've got fear, you don't have psychological safety yet. Challenger safety is a level of psychological safety so high that people feel empowered to challenge the status quo, leaving their comfort zone to put a creative or disruptive idea on the table. And a creative idea can often be disruptive if it's going to lead to innovation, because it disrupts a process or a procedure or a perspective that has been held in the past. When you do that, now you've destroyed the status quo. You brought in something new in the process. You have to let that chaos balance out. Wait for that creativity to lead to that change. That change comes from a new policy, a new perspective, a new product that emerges from that chaos. That chaos came from the disruption of the new idea. So, empowered people and challenger safety. In challenger safety, individuals feel free to give their opinions. But this fear can be really high. There can be a lot of fear. Never try to coerce innovation. Don't set your team down and say, we need to innovate this product. We need to do it now. I need you, you, and you. You're going to come up with ideas for innovation right now, today. What you will have are not ideas that will lead to innovation, because you're forcing it. Let the people innovate on their own free will, in their own way, in their own time, as a team. So in this stage, the issues, they can become political, meaning internal, so organizational politics. There could be stress, they could be stress-inducing and even difficult. You don't want to cause additional fear in your team when you're opening up the challenger stage to them. You want them to feel safe. They know that they are respected, that they've gained permission from you, and they're still going to experience fear, but they feel that you have their back, that you as the leader are going to protect them. Individuals need to feel that it is safe to make mistakes. We brought that up all the way back when we talked about learner safety. Mistakes actually can be a good thing. Mistakes can show you where the weak parts are, the weak points in your policy, plan, procedure, or your new technology. Mistakes can show you how it can become better, how you can make it more beneficial. Also, if you have team members who are neurodivergent, meaning they have ADD, ADHD, anything that's neurodivergent, meaning their mind, their brain doesn't function the same as would be expected in most people. There's something in their mind that's not exactly quote unquote normal. And I word it that way because I don't think people with ADD and ADHD are not normal, but their brains definitely perceive the world differently than most everyone else. These people can become great assets because they perceive things that we don't. So you want them on your team. You welcome them. You include them. You give them the safety. But they can also experience the highest levels of fear, more so than other team members who are neurosimilar. Innovation can upset how the team actually accomplishes its tasks. If you innovate policies or procedures, it will change, or processes, you will actually change how that team literally does its work. You have to allow time for that team to balance itself out after that innovative change. If you're innovating technology, now what you're upsetting is the production line, the marketing department, the consumer base. So wherever innovation happens, you got to watch out for that because things are going to change. You want the innovation, but as a leader, you have to plan ahead for that disruption. Challenger safety and mistakes. When a leader asks their team to innovate, they are asking them to risk failing, being criticized, and becoming vulnerable. Because innovation requires that each of you are actively involved in either trying, identifying, or coming up with something that's new and different. It's not ever been done that way before. And when you bring it to the table, maybe it doesn't work. As a human, you fear that you're going to be judged. You're going to be ridiculed. No. In challenger safety, you don't want that. You don't want ridicule. You don't want judgment. Mistakes are welcome. Mistakes are what's going to make that innovation actually succeed ultimately. And your people, your team members, can you think back to a time when you did something and it made you feel vulnerable, when you raised your hand in class and you gave your idea of how something should be answered, your perception on something, when you contributed an idea to a team? It caused fear inside of you because you're making yourself vulnerable. You want to make people feel safe because they're making themselves vulnerable. They're making it so that they can be harmed, not physically, but their ego, their pride, their creativity. So we never shoot people down in a negative way. If an idea does not work, if there's mistakes in it, we don't make fun of the person that presented it. We find the strong points and we say, these are the strong points. We need these points. Thank you for bringing those to us. We need to find areas that will now gird up and strengthen the rest of it. Make that person feel good. Even in the midst of making a mistake, they can feel like a success because they brought 2 or 3 things to the team that actually work, even though their whole idea is a mistake. So there's always something positive that can be found. Which brings us to candor for cover. Clark noted, candor for cover means that you as the leader protect each person's right to speak candidly about any topic, provided they don't make personal attacks or have a malicious intent. So you're allowing this candor for cover, you're giving the person safety to give ideas, even if the ideas are wrong. We're keeping that person safe from ridicule, safe from judgment. And if their idea does have mistakes, we don't make fun of that. We find the parts that are strongest and we say we're going to use those. Because if we come up with a truly innovative, new way of doing something, no one of us came up with that whole innovation on our own. Each person contributed something, and that's what made it emerge from the team. Emergent behavior happens when you're dealing with innovation. What is emergent behavior? birds are on one island. They got short beaks and they've got brown feathers. Some of them somehow are able to migrate to an island on a ship or something like that. It's too far for the bird to fly. But now there's a new bird species there. But their beaks are too short to get the worms. So their beaks over time begin to grow longer. The predators spot them because of the brown feathers, because everything else is maybe gray. So their feathers become more gray. These are emergent properties in that bird. Just like that happens in nature, so too on a team do we have these emergent properties that come from the entire team. Everybody contributes a little bit. And the end product, the finished product, is so much better than any one of us could have ever imagined. And no one person can take credit for it, not even the leader. Because that team did it as a team, as a unit. This is what primarily separates positive and constructive dissent from destructive dissent. If you receive that information, you provide cover for candor. Now the person can speak openly, candidly. As long as they're not speaking from a point of attacking anybody or having a selfish malintent inside them when they do this, they are safe, even if what they mention is a mistake. That level of safety is what challenger safety is all about. And the candor for cover is provided by the leader. The one person who can actually get involved in a situation and provide conflict resolution, who can help mitigate future problems from developing in the organizational behavioral patterns, that leader. But at the end, it's not the leader's innovation, it's the team's innovation. Think of an innovative idea, some innovation as being like a child. My son is 20? No, he's almost 21. He is genetically half me, half his mother. He went through social conditioning. That's the nurture part of development, mostly at his mom's house, but some at mine. So he learned things from both of us. Genetically, he is part of each of us, but he is neither me and he's neither her. He's his own being. He emerged from that relationship. That is what emergence is. And when a team comes up with an innovative idea, that's exactly what that is. The idea is the product of every single individual on that team. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So let's talk about respect yet again. Clark stated that respect for the individual's ability to motivate. That's what's needed here. Respect for the individual's ability to innovate, not for the innovation itself, but their ability to innovate. So, Riley, you are receiving respect because you have an ability to add to the innovation. You can think creatively, so you get respect for that. You get respect because you bring a different perspective to this, which gives a different angle on the feedback. Peter gets respect because maybe he's able to see how both of these things can unite together. And he's able to draw these two concepts together now. So each person is getting respect for how they are leading to the innovation that's occurring. If you're on a team that's going towards innovation, you are adding to that innovation. You have an ability to innovate or be involved in the innovation process. So we turn back to page 94 in your textbook. And this is the basic chart that Clark gives us, going through the different stages. You see there's the exclusion stage, where somebody's not on the team or in the group. Inclusion safety, where being human is all that matters. Learner safety, where we first learn that mistakes are actually beneficial in learning. Contributor safety, where people are able to contribute ideas Challenger safety, where the status quo is now being challenged. What's the status quo? The way we've done things in the past. The past and the present application of the past is the status quo. Innovation is changing that to something that is new and different. Much like the bird's beak grew longer so he can get the worms, and the feathers became gray so the predators wouldn't eat them. Something new emerged. Innovation. Clark noted that the ability to innovate is earned through individual performance. So in our example, Riley, Alexander, Peter, Vios, Jacob, Connor, Leah, Marapaz, Bonnie, Marianne, Savina, Crystal, Michaela, Trajan, Corey, and myself. We all are on a team. But we have to individually prove through our performance that we have an ability to innovate. We earn that privilege. Everyone must receive this right or this privilege. Permission is given to the person under the belief that they are acting with a pure motive to help improve things. So if I know that, and I'm going to pick on you, Peter, if I know Peter actually has self-interest at heart, he and I have known each other for a couple of years, we've spent a lot of time talking, I know he's trying to figure out the next move in his career so he can get a better paycheck at a better title. That's what's motivating him. Everyone else on the team is trying to figure out the best thing for that team, for the project we're working on. But Peter, he's thinking about himself. Now, I don't believe that's the case, but I'm using it as an example. I would not give him the privilege or the right to innovate because he hasn't earned it yet. He hasn't shown me that he can do this in a humble, even empathetic. Let me pronounce the word, Brian. Empathetic way. Once he proves that, now I can give him the right to be involved in the innovation because now he'd be acting with a pure motive. Back to that status quo and permission. Clark pointed out that the leader can accept a person's challenge to the status quo based on their past performance, which means that some individuals may have their challenges considered more seriously than others. So using the example, this time it's Peter I'm going to pick on. I've known each of you for the same period of time. You're on my team. We've known each other for 2.5 years. But Peter has not yet really proved his performance when it comes to innovation yet. When he challenges the status quo, he hasn't proven that yet, but the rest of you have. So I'm able to extend challenger safety to everybody except Peter in that moment. Let me point out here, that means the team has not yet reached challenger safety because we left one person behind. We as a team now have got to go back and pick him up to bring him up to speed, to get his performance to match so that now he can receive challenger safety also. But while we're doing that, when he brings a challenge versus Alexander or Vios bringing a challenge who have proven themselves, I'm going to listen to their challenges more than I will his because these individuals have proven their ability. They've proven their intent, and it's been over time. This is not something you can prove in a day. You must prove it over time. Attempting to challenge a status quo without psychological safety can produce negative results because people experience what? Fear. Fear of the unknown. And when you're challenging the status quo, that's exactly what you're doing. You're tackling the unknown because you're saying the old way is not working anymore. We need a new way. That's the unknown. People are scared of that. Have you ever heard the saying or somebody say, well, we never did it that way before? Or, hey, do you remember the good old days? Those are sayings that show that person is afraid of the change of the future, the innovation. And remember, I said that that comes through creativity, which happens because of chaos. People fear change. Psychological safety helps mitigate or reduce, lessen that fear. Teams where the status quo is challenged that do not have a psychological safety culture, do not have a culture of psychological safety, can often be a team that shows that its culture is toxic or vindictive. Everyone is stabbing everyone in the back. This can be abusive. It can lead other people to self-censor, to fear, and to hide mistakes. Now, instead of bringing your idea, mistakes and all, and putting it on the table, you're hiding it because you're afraid people are going to ridicule you. You're afraid people are going to judge you. And if you do make a mistake, you hide it. Now, the big problem with that is I've been a team leader where people hid mistakes. The team suffers. So as a leader, you have to do the work that's needed to create the environment where psychological safety can develop. You can't just walk into the team your first day as a leader and poof, you have psychological safety. Why? Clark shows us 4 distinct stages that you got to go through. And when you finish one, when you finish the inclusion stage, you move the learner, you don't stop practicing inclusion safety. When you move from learner safety to contributor safety, you don't stop the inclusion safety or the learner safety. You continue those. Do you see? So the higher you get, the more you actually have to make sure the team is doing. You have to provide more respect, more permission. You have to provide more safety. It's a lot of work. But I tell you what, if you want to lead a successful team, that's what you have to do. Now, leaders are also human beings, and leaders can have an ego. This ego can be problematic when people challenge something. It could be a status quo, it could be something about me as a leader. When there's a challenge, I should become agnostic, and I'll explain here in a minute, about title, position, authority, or authority when someone challenges the status quo. Agnostic is a Greek word meaning without knowledge. And agnostic says, I don't know. So in this scenario, Bios comes to me and he's challenging something that's a status quo. It could be about my leadership. It could be about the team, anything. I have to take the position of, I don't know, when it pertains to my title, my position, my authority. In other words, my position, my title, my authority are not more important than Vios being able to challenge the status quo. His ability to challenge the status quo is more value than my title as a professor. It's of more value than my position as a leader of a team, even if I'm the CEO of the company. If we honestly want psychological safety, that's the cost. The leader's ego. Clark discussed how innovation, I'm just checking the time here. All right. How innovation often occurs when there is great competitive stress and increased pressure. Competitive stress. We've talked about, and I know you already know this from other classes, competitive advantage. A nation, a region, an organization a team even can have a competitive advantage over other industries or teams in their organization or their industry. If this team is receiving awards industry wide, we have a competitive advantage throughout the entire industry of making widgets. But there's a stress that goes with that. Kind of like in athletics. You do all the training, you practice as a team, you go to the event, you go to the game, you have a stress because you are now competing. You are showing how much practice you and your team have done. You're showing how good you are. There's increased pressure on you because now you got referees. You have the other team fighting you for that competitive advantage. You have spectators watching you. You may have friends and family watching you. The stress is going to be high. Same thing with wrestling. But if you want to innovate, those stressors, they're going to occur. The team is going to feel stress. Creative innovation is achievable when the leader welcomes team members to constructively dissent without including manufactured fear to the existing natural stress. And that natural stress is if a bear walked in the room, if there's a mountain lion in the hallway, that's natural stress. If you're at a wrestling meet, Alexander, there's a natural fear that happens because you got to get out there and actually now compete. You got to show all the training you've done. You try to focus yourself, but you've got that feeling inside of you that I really got to do the best I can. It's on the line right now. The same thing happens in teams. There's a natural fear that goes with being in a team. Because some people actually have a social fear, a fear of being in a social grouping. Not everybody, but some do. Some people have a greater fear of mistakes than others. Some people fear failure. Some people fear standing in front of audiences, even small ones. There is some form of natural fear in each party, sorry, get amused for a second, of that team. So the leader should not make more fear. That's that manufactured fear. As a leader now, I work to remove manufactured fear. You've already got fear, natural stress. You now should be able to constructively dissent without any additional fear. In the Army, we had natural fear and we had manufactured fear because if you went to your sergeant, your platoon sergeant, first sergeant, captain, whoever, you had to do things right. You got to salute the right way, stand the right way, attention, parade, rest, whatever it is. And you got to tell somebody something and it's not good news. You say, with all due respect, sir. And then you used to go and say it respectfully, that sort of thing. And if you don't do it right, you could be in trouble. There was manufactured fear like crazy. On my team, I tried to remove that. I tried to make it so my guys knew that I was in charge. I was the team sergeant. They knew that. But when we would talk about plans, the lowest private to even me were able to contribute ideas. They felt safe. As a leader, you got to remove the manufactured fear so your team is able to challenge the status quo. Now, there are some social origins of innovation. Clark recommended that leaders take one of three potential options. So you got three different routes. You have existing knowledge with existing knowledge. You have existing knowledge with new knowledge. And you have new knowledge with new knowledge. Existing knowledge with existing knowledge means knowledge of past ways of doing things combined with knowledge of past ways of doing things. You're living in the past. You're living the status quo. Existing knowledge, meaning past knowledge, with new knowledge. You're combining status quo with an emergence, an innovative way of looking at things. Or you could look at an innovative way of looking at things combined with an innovative way of looking at things. Challenger safety is about challenging the status quo. So really that first one doesn't really seem to be challenger safety, does it? Because you're living in the past. But the second one seems to be living on both sides of the fence. One foot in the status quo and one foot in the emergence. That last one, however, it looks like that team dove straight into the deep end of the pool. That pool of emergence saying, let's innovate. Knowledge. Clark pointed out that innovation is developed inside a learning process. You want your team to innovate? They must have learner safety, which means inclusion safety is also there, and of course, contributor safety. You want to make sure that your team is able to learn and that they're actively learning. Back to when I was in the Army, every Thursday morning, we had training. You know who did the training? Team sergeants, platoon sergeants, platoon leaders. Platoon leaders were officers. The other ones were non-commissioned officers. We'd have to go through the manuals, get the information, prepare our training, and go and train our team or our platoon or our section or our company sometimes. We had to make sure our team was perpetually learning. Not necessarily something new, but maybe a new application of something that we'd already been working on. So what's that? That's using that existing knowledge with new knowledge. If you take an old way of doing something and you apply it to a new situation, that is a form of innovation. You got a foot on both sides of that fence. You're in the status quo, but you're also in emergence. Clark also states, in the process of innovation, learning is more important than knowing. This is kind of an interesting one. Knowing means that you have the answers. It's the process of getting those answers that is most important and most valuable in innovation. Because that's where mistakes happen. And mistakes actually are part of the innovation process. You've heard the saying, you can't make a cake without breaking some eggs. Well, when you're innovating, you're going to have mistakes. Some mistakes are ones you sit there and go, yes, we really need to avoid doing that again. Now we know that's a potential problem. We can avoid it. Some mistakes actually bring with it a new way of doing something. An emergence of something new, something innovative. You see that innovation often comes because of the mistake. The mistake is like the seed that gets planted in the ground, the fertile soil of the team, and the plant that grows is innovation. So you need the process of learning for innovation. The process of knowing is nice, but it's not going to bring about innovation. To have a learning environment, safety must be in place. So take your team through the 4 stages of psychological safety. Make sure that it's safe. Make sure that people have cover for candor. Allow for mistakes, because you as the leader now know mistakes cause innovation. I'm just double checking the time. I think we're going to end there for the day. We're going to pick back up on the next slide. So we've gone through the knowledge slide. This is kind of a lengthy lecture. I think I've got 45 slides this time. We're finishing up psychological safety. So we got to finish challenger safety. Then we're going to be doing a quick summation, a quick review. And then we're getting ready to launch into the book by Barry Oshry. And I'm going to tell you right now, you thought the book by Clark was fun to read? The book by Oshry can be fun, even more fun at times. There's poetry. There's narratives. There's like descriptions of role playing. It's actually a unique book. I like it a lot. I actually own physical copies of both of these books. And I've read the physical copies, and I love these. These are great. Some of my favorite books. So let me close out this and this. I hope if I could get a cursor to seriously, just wish. Got it. I want to now open the floor up virtually and in the classroom for any questions, any comments, anybody that may have realized something or perceived something that you hadn't perceived before. I want you to ask questions, share your perceptions with us, your experience, this journey you've been on through Challenger safety and actually through all of psychological safety. So I'm going to open the floor up. This means that I am going to shut my mouth. And you can talk. Raise your hands. Help.
Right now?
Sure, you got questions, comments. Now's the time to go.
Take a little bit longer.
Okay.
Can we do the next class?
You can. We can do that. We can begin the next class with that. That's fine too. For those who couldn't hear, Bios asked if we could begin the next class. This way he could have some time to actually process everything. And that actually sounds pretty wise. I still will leave the floor open for a minute in case anybody has anything today they want to bring out. Yes, Mr. Bias.
I'd like to know, like, or hear your opinion about those 4 stages. What do you think is like the most important stage?
There's not one that's most important because they relate together. Okay, you pressed the gun to my head, you said, Dr. G, you've got to tell me what's the most important stage. I'm going to say inclusion. Because that's what begins everything else. The beginning of something often carries with it a lot of weight. However, I'm going to say ultimately, all 4 stages, they carry so much value. But you can't have challenger safety without innovation safety. You can't have contributor safety without innovation safety. You see what I'm saying? Personally, I think psychological safety is a very wise approach to take as a leader. Not because it leads to innovation. That's a benefit. But because it allows for each person to truly be treated fairly and equitably in a diverse and inclusive environment. Because you see, psychological safety, it's like a practical, a lived DEI experience. One where people are equal, where people have a say. People have an opportunity to excel. So sorry, I couldn't answer more than that. I think that they're all really important. Okay, so before we close out, if anybody has anything they want to ask, contribute, or anything, raise your hand. I say that morely for our online crew so we don't get 20 people all talking at once. All right, on that note, we will end today's lecture. I'll be uploading the video hopefully tonight when I get home. I have to process it first. And I'll put the slides from today up there also. All right. Let me double check the class. Okay, Corey's here. I got to mark Corey off. Corey, Crystal, Corey, Leah. I got you. All right. I got everybody. Everybody have a great day, okay? All those online, see you later.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yep. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.